This story takes place in the late 80s or early 90s. I was just a kid, 6, maybe 7 years old, living in a small Texas town where everyone knew everybody. That night, I learned just how vulnerable we really were. It was winter, and though Texas doesn't get snow like up north, the desert cold was biting. My sister, who was about 15 at the time, was babysitting me while our parents were out. She looked after me often, and despite our age gap, we always got along really well. That night, it was just the two of us at home. We were curled up in the common room, the only place with a TV, watching one of those gritty true crime programs that used to air in hour-long blocks. I can't remember which one exactly, maybe 60 minutes, 48 hours, or hard copy. They all blurred together, but this episode, it stuck with me. It was a story about a quiet man who lived next door to a family, and then, one day, just snapped. He went on a rampage, mutilated the family, and kidnapped their young daughter. A full-on manhunt was underway. Our common room had a lot of windows, floor-to-ceiling glass that lined the back wall, and in the middle of that wall was a big glass door leading to the backyard. We hadn't turned the light on. The front door was on the opposite side of the room. It was a heavy wooden door you couldn't see through, but it had a glass storm door on the outside. About 45 minutes into the episode, right as they were describing the manhunt for this killer, we heard a loud, violent pounding on the front door. We both jumped and screamed. Then, dead silence. The only lights on in the house were the soft glow of the kitchen down the hallway and the blue hue of the TV. My heart was pounding in my chest. My sister whispered that it was probably the wind. West Texas was known for powerful gusts, and we had some planters and a rocking chair out on the porch. We sat there, frozen, holding on to each other, trying to calm down. Maybe it was nothing. A minute passed, then another. Just when we were about to breathe easy again, we heard it. The storm door outside, the one you'd have to open to bang on the front door, closed. Slowly, quietly. That meant someone had been there. No wind, no planter. Someone had opened that outer door and knocked. My sister and I stared at each other, completely frozen. I didn't move, didn't breathe. She slowly reached over and turned the TV off. It was one of those older sets. You had to physically rotate a dial to shut it off. And the click it made echoed through the silence. Now we were sitting in near darkness. The only light came from down the hallway, casting long shadows into the room. I turned around to glance at the glass wall behind us. That's when we heard the back door knob turn. It rattled. Someone was trying to open it. It was locked, but only with the knob, not the deadbolt. They were gentle at first, like they were testing it. I could see the handle move. My small reflection in the glass blurred and sharpened with each attempt, as the door jerked and the windows vibrated. Then suddenly they yanked hard, violently. The entire wall shook. The glass shimmered. It looked like the whole structure would snap. My sister screamed. I couldn't move. I sat there, knees pulled to my chest, trembling. She yanked me up by the arm and dragged me to her bedroom. She slammed the door shut. She shoved her mattress and anything she could find in front of it. Dresser drawers, laundry baskets, her desk chair. Then, thankfully, she remembered the phone. It was one of those heavy beige cordless ones with a long metal antenna. But in her panic, she couldn't remember the sheriff's number. She just hit redial. It was one of her friends. Through gasps and sobs, she begged them to get over here. Right now. I'll never forget the desperation in her voice. She even cursed, which was shocking to me at the time. I was curled up on the floor. My whole body was shaking uncontrollably. We didn't hear anything else after that, not a sound. Then, finally, we saw headlights in the front windows. Her friend and her friend's parents pulled into the driveway. They ran up to the house. When they checked everything, they found nothing. No broken glass, no open doors. Just a couple of faint scuff marks at the bottom of the back door. Maybe new, maybe not. We couldn't tell. We never found out who it was, or why they came to our house that night. But from that moment on, we never forgot to lock every door. no matter what. Some moments etch themselves into your memory so deeply that you can still feel them decades later. For me, this was one of those nights, and I still wonder, what would have happened if one of those doors had been unlocked? I grew up in rural Oklahoma, one of those places with a single traffic light and fields that stretched for miles in every direction. Our old farmhouse sat right on the edge of one such field, just past the tree line. It was peaceful, isolated, the kind of place where you could go days without seeing anyone but your neighbors. And even then, only at church or the post office. It was October, early fall. The nights were getting cold and came quicker each evening. My parents had left for the night to attend a PTA fundraiser in town, and I was left home alone. I was 11. They trusted me. I was quiet, well-behaved, and the nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away. Nothing ever really happened out there. Or so I thought. They told me they'd be back by 9. I had a grilled cheese, a blanket, and a small portable radio playing some country station out of Tulsa. I remember I was feeling proud, grown up even, for being left alone for the night. At around 8 o'clock, I turned the radio down and went to grab a soda from the fridge. When I came back into the living room, I noticed it. The motion sensor light out back had turned on. Now that light wasn't all that sensitive. It didn't flick on for just anything. A raccoon or deer might set it off, but not often. Still, I wasn't too alarmed at first. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out, expecting to see maybe a possum nosing around the trash bins. Instead, I saw a figure. A man. He was standing at the very edge of the light's reach, right where the grass from our yard met the tall, unkempt field. His clothes looked dark, and I couldn't make out his face. He wasn't moving, just standing there, looking at the house. I ducked away from the window so fast I nearly fell over. My heart was pounding. Every part of me was screaming to do something, anything, but all I could do was crouch behind the counter and listen. The light stayed on. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I slowly peeked up again, just enough to look out the window. He was closer now, no mistaking it. He had moved about 20 feet toward the house, and he was still facing me, still perfectly still. My legs felt like jelly. I tried calling my parents, but they didn't answer, probably in a school gym with bad reception. I hung up and tried our closest neighbor, Mr. Campbell, but the line rang and rang. No answer. I locked every door, double-checked the windows, then grabbed my dad's old hunting knife. I was too scared to think clearly. I turned off every light in the house and sat in the hallway, hidden from any windows, clutching that knife, like it would somehow protect me. I didn't dare look again. It must have been half an hour before my parents got home. Their headlights filled the driveway like a rescue beacon. I bolted to the door and yanked it open before they could even turn off the engine. I was crying, shaking, trying to explain what happened. My dad grabbed a flashlight and ran to the backyard with a baseball bat. I stayed glued to my mom's side, unable to do anything but breathe in shallow gulps. There was no sign of him, nothing. But the next morning, we found it. On the back porch, placed carefully in the middle of the welcome mat, was a small stack of 3 stones, balanced perfectly. We didn't recognize them. My dad had never stacked rocks like that, and there were no similar stones anywhere nearby. He tried to play it off, maybe a neighbor kid messing around, but his face was pale. And from that night on, we started locking every door and window, even in the middle of nowhere.